Welcome to Le Weekend, the bonus extended podcast episode for France News Brief. In case you missed one of our dailies, we've put together a convenient way to catch up on the stories from the past week in France, plus additional content about something related to culture, art, history, or current events at the end. If you enjoyed our daily updates, you'll find everything you need right here in a seamless recap of the week's most important headlines. Perfect for those who want to catch up in just one episode, Le Weekend is designed to keep you informed and engaged with a lighter touch at the end. Let's dive in. The news we covered on Monday. A swarm of jellyfish caused a nuclear plant in France to shut down. Operator EDF said that 4 units of the Gravelines power plant in northern France were shut down on Monday, August 11th, due to the massive and unpredictable presence of jellyfish in the pumping stations for the water used to cool the reactors, as reported by Libération. The legendary Fabergé luxury brand was acquired by tech investor SMG Capital for $50 million. The iconic luxury jeweler, known for its ornate imperial Easter eggs, was previously owned by British firm Gemfields, as reported by Les Echos. The heat wave that began on Friday is set to intensify with exceptional temperatures forecast in the southwest today, where 12 departments have been placed on red alert by Météo France, as reported by France 24. The government set a deadline for talks on scrapping 2 holidays in France. Negotiations over eliminating the national holidays will need to be concluded by September 30th, as the government seeks ways to narrow its repeated budget deficits, according to sources cited by Les Echos. Exorbitant levels of microplastics contaminate bottled water Contrex and Epar. The findings of the investigation by the French Office for Biodiversity revealed that the brands contain high levels of microplastics due to landfills abandoned by Nestlé, which have polluted water sources, as published by Mediapart. The news we covered on Tuesday. A fire in the Charente destroyed more than 230 hectares of vegetation. The fire broke out late Monday afternoon in the La Double Massif, as reported by France 24. Metallurgist Novasco was placed in receivership with 760 jobs at risk. The former Ascometal was acquired in July 2024 by the British investment fund Greybull Capital, which did not inject the 90 million euros promised alongside the French government, which provided 75 million to the company, as reported by Le Figaro. France's Public Health Agency sounded the alarm after drownings doubled during the early summer heat wave and warned that climate change will make this occurrence more frequent. Drownings in France have risen 45% this summer compared to the same period last year, as reported by RFI. A summer crime wave spurred police reinforcement in Saint-Tropez. Luxury hotspots in the Gulf are facing a rise in violent robberies this summer, prompting a major security clampdown, as reported by RFI. The news we covered on Wednesday. France recalled several types of soft cheeses after 2 suspected deaths. Several kinds of potentially contaminated camembert, brie, and other soft cheeses were recalled after 2 people died from listeriosis infection, and several fell ill after eating cheeses sold in supermarkets nationwide, as reported by France Info. European launcher Ariane 6 successfully took off from French Guiana. The rocket carries the METOP SGA-1 meteorological satellite to be launched into orbit, designed to improve the accuracy of weather forecasts and understanding of the climate, as reported by Le Figaro. France formally acknowledged its role in Cameroon's struggle for independence. President Emmanuel Macron admitted that France waged a repressive war in Cameroon during its decolonization in a letter signed on July 30 but only disclosed yesterday, as reported by Le Monde. Multi-starred chef Thierry Marx warned of a risk of de-gastronomization of France. The president of UMIH, the main professional organization in the sector, is calling for the implementation of a framework law to protect the threatened homemade gastronomy and doesn't rule out the introduction of a diploma required to open a restaurant, as reported by Le Figaro. The news we covered on Thursday. French consumer inflation was confirmed at 0.9% in July. The inflation figure remained stable and met analysts' expectations and the preliminary reading, according to Statistics Office ANSEE, as reported by Reuters. France, Britain, and Germany threatened to reimpose sanctions on Iran as the nuclear program deadline nears. The three countries' foreign ministers wrote a letter to the UN that said they were ready to trigger the snapback mechanism, which allows the Western parties to reimpose sanctions if Iran breaches the existing deal, as reported by Le Monde. Thousands of pharmacies are set to close their doors this Saturday, August 16th, following a call from the union, joined by several professional organizations. A mass strike by pharmacies has been announced to protest mainly against the gradual reduction in discounts granted by laboratories on generic medicines, as reported by Le Figaro. Russia's Justice Ministry said it designated the French-based international press freedom organization Reporters Without Borders as an undesirable organization. Previously designated organizations include U.S. government-funded Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, international environmental organization Greenpeace, and London-based Amnesty International, as reported by Reuters. The news we covered on Friday. Virgin Trains are stepping up efforts to compete with the Eurostar trains by 2030. Facing a tight market in the UK, Virgin Trains, the railway company founded by Richard Branson, aims to compete with Eurostar and has already signed an agreement with French manufacturer Alstom for the delivery of 12 high-speed trains, as reported by L'Echo. The government released an emergency fund of 8 million euros to farmers affected by the wildfire in the Aude department in southern France, which mostly affected vineyards, as reported by BFM. The Economy Ministry capped bank charges related to inheritances at 850 euros, just under $1,000. The measure was introduced in response to the abuses observed in the area of inheritance fees. The amount will be revalued on the 1st of January of each year, as reported by L'Agify. French leaders condemned the felling of a tree honoring a murdered Jewish man. President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister François Bayrou today condemned anti-Semitic hatred after a tree planted in tribute to Ilan Halimi, a 23-year-old Jewish man, was cut down. Halimi was kidnapped and tortured in January 2006, as reported by RFI. In addition to his podcast FB Direct, Prime Minister François Bayrou invited the French to write to him directly, in a new step in his plan to gain acceptance for his 2026 budget proposal. Citizens can now write directly to the Prime Minister via the email address fbdirect@premier-ministre.gouv.fr or via the Agora application, as reported by Le Figaro. France is facing a sharp decline in priestly vocations. The number of priests has fallen from 65,000 in 1960 to around 12,000 today. While recruiting foreign priests and merging parishes have eased the decline, the Catholic Church in France continues to grapple with how to address the phenomenon, as reported by Le Monde. Unwanted on the French Riviera, the floating beach Canoa Island is now sailing towards Malta after being sold. Opened last summer near Cannes after much controversy, this nomadic recreational island will no longer be visible on the French Riviera coast, as reported by Le Figaro. Welcome to Le Weekend, the bonus extended podcast episode for France News Brief. In case you missed one of our dailies, we've put together a convenient way to catch up on the stories from the past week in France, plus additional content about something related to culture, art, history, or current events at the end. This week in history, France remembers the 81st anniversary of Operation Dragoon. On August 15, 1944, Allied forces landed in southern France near Nice in Operation Dragoon, opening a new front that rapidly advanced towards the Rhine River and helped liberate France from German occupation. This was part of the broader liberation efforts following D-Day in Normandy earlier that summer. Operation Dragoon was the Allied invasion of southern France during World War II that played a crucial but sometimes overlooked role in the liberation of France and the overall Allied strategy in Europe. Initially planned to be executed in conjunction with the Normandy landings, which were known under code name Operation Overlord, as part of a two-pronged assault on German forces occupying France, the operation was ultimately delayed and renamed from its original codename Anvil to Dragoon. This operation marked the opening of a new front in France aimed at securing vital Mediterranean ports and accelerating the defeat of German forces in Western Europe. As for the strategic background and planning, Operation Dragoon was conceived as an essential complement to the Normandy invasion. The objective was to force German forces to fight on two fronts in France while providing the Allies with access to southern ports such as Marseille and Toulon, which were crucial for improving the Allies' logistical capabilities. At the Tehran Conference in December 1943, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill had favored advancing through Italy and the Balkans, whereas US President Franklin D. Roosevelt and Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight Eisenhower supported the southern France invasion to relieve pressure on the northern front and shorten supply lines. Resource limitations initially shelved the operation shortly after Normandy, but the pressing need to solve logistics problems, Normandy's ports were either heavily damaged or insufficient, and increasing pressure from the French Liberation Army led to a revival and approval of the invasion plan in July 1944. Now for preliminary operations. Before the main amphibious landings on August 15th, Allied commandos and special forces conducted preliminary operations to secure strategic positions and weaken German defenses. The 1st Special Service Force, a unique US-Canadian joint unit, captured islands such as Port Cross, an island across from Hyères, and Levant, to eliminate German artillery threats that could disrupt the beach landings. These preliminary actions, including operations on Cap Negre further east down the coast by French commandos, paved the way for safer landings on the mainland by reducing enemy coastal defenses and confusing the Germans with diversionary tactics. The main landing began on August 15, 1944, with the US 6th Corps supported by a strong naval task force assaulting beaches approaching the Côte d'Azur. French Army B, consisting largely of Free French troops, the movement founded by General Charles de Gaulle, played an important role in the assault, symbolizing France's role in its own liberation. German forces defending southern France were significantly weakened by redeployments elsewhere and consisted in many areas of less experienced troops and collaborators. This disparity allowed the Allies to achieve rapid progress with comparatively limited initial resistance. Then came time to advance. After the beachheads were established, Allied forces advanced rapidly northward along the Rhône Valley. In parallel, the swift liberation of key ports, Marseille and Toulon, was critical. These ports were quickly repaired and reopened. Marseille alone eventually handled over a third of all Allied supply shipments destined for the Western Front by October 1944. This logistical breakthrough eased supply bottlenecks that had constrained the Allied effort after D-Day and enabled sustained operations into the German border. German Army Group G, which was responsible for defending southern France, conducted an orderly withdrawal northward to establish a defensive line at Dijon and later the Vosges Mountains. The Allies attempted to cut off the retreat at Montélimar, but were ultimately unable to trap the German forces completely due to shortages of fuel and logistical challenges, which allowed many of the better German units to escape and regroup. The success of Operation Dragoon had a number of significant consequences for the Allied war effort. It opened a second front in France. By establishing a new front, the operation forced German forces to spread thinner, easing pressure on Normandy and enabling faster overall liberation of France. It opened southern ports. Ports like Marseille and Toulon became vital supply hubs that greatly improved the Allies' logistical capabilities beyond what northern ports like Cherbourg or Antwerp could provide at the time. It boosted French morale and participation. The involvement of the French First Army in the operation helped restore French pride and sovereignty, strengthening the French contribution to the liberation. It wasn't, though, without controversy. Although militarily successful, the operation was politically contentious. Churchill opposed Dragoon, believing it detracted from the Italian campaign and delayed an advance into Central Europe through the Balkans. This strategic disagreement underscored Allied tensions but did not diminish the concrete operational benefits Dragoon delivered. The operation was effectively completed in about a month, with the offensive halted in mid-September due to logistical constraints and stiffening German resistance. Allied armies then focused on consolidating gains and preparing for subsequent operations into Germany. The operation involved coordinating amphibious assaults, airborne drops, and rapid mechanized advances. Naval support was critical to suppress German coastal defenses, while air superiority denied the Germans the ability to mount effective counterattacks. The combination of American and French ground forces, backed by extensive special operations, overwhelmed German defenses, which were further undermined by French resistance uprising, coordinated with Allied advances. The Germans, however, although forced to retreat, managed to conduct a fighting withdrawal that preserved their combat power in the short term. This was due to the long Allied supply lines, the unexpectedly rapid advance, and fuel shortages that limited the pursuit's intensity. The legacy of Operation Dragoon is sometimes overshadowed by the more famous Normandy invasion, but it is viewed by historians and military analysts as a significant and well-executed campaign that substantially contributed to the Allied victory in Western Europe. The logistical advantages achieved in southern France had strategic ripple effects throughout the remainder of the campaign, allowing continuous resupply and reinforcement. In summary, Operation Dragoon was a decisive Allied amphibious invasion that opened a southern front in France on August 15, 1944. It enabled the rapid liberation of southern France, secured crucial Mediterranean ports, and contributed significantly to the overall success of the Allied advance into Nazi-occupied Europe. The operation involved a complex interplay of strategic priorities, multinational forces, special operations, and rapid mechanized warfare, and remains an important but sometimes underappreciated chapter of World War II history. Thank you for listening to Le Weekend, your one-stop destination for everything we covered this past week in France. Catch our daily France News Brief roundups of the main news in France every weekday, wherever you get your podcasts. Stay informed.